your host, Dianne Hart, on the opening statement. This evening, I have the awesome pleasure of interviewing for the second time Dr. Marvin Dunn. Many of you all may not know, but Dr. Dunn is a veteran professor. He's an author. He's a husband. I'm just excited to have this opportunity to continue an interview we did a few months ago. And we're going to talk to Dr. Marvin Dunn about what transpired since then up to now. Many of you all know, as in our previous interview, we talked about the white supremacists that tried to run both he and his son over in Rosewood. Now, Rosewood is a place that only he, the only black man that owns any property in Rosewood. Is that true?
That's correct.
So I want to make sure I'm giving out factual information. Don't want to be giving out anything that's not correct. So Dr. Dunn, let's just jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about what has transpired since we last had our interview when you filed charges against the white supremacists that tried to run you all over.
The man who was convicted of 6 counts of hate crime against me and my son and 4 other people was convicted by an all-white jury in Gainesville. I was amazed at that. He was sentenced to 6 years to 1 year and a day by the judge. Representative, before this court appearance happened, before he was tried, I wrote to the other 5 members who were plaintiffs in this case. I was raised to allow people a chance to redeem themselves. So I asked the other 5 people if they would agree to ask the court to not have this man go to prison. This man's name is David Emanuel. His son-in-law called me, pleading for mercy for the family.
Right.
I'm a grandpa. And this man could possibly, his grandchildren would be damaged by him being away. And that touched me. Wrote the judge a letter, which I was allowed to read in open court. When he was called, but the judge said that deterrence was necessary. So he was going to send him to prison anyway for a year and a day. And then that was it. So I assume that today as we speak, he is in federal prison. So Levy County then tried him just a few weeks ago on that charge. And we also made the same plea to the court that leniency be shown to the family first, and then to Mr. Emanuel, that to spend a year and a day in jail, in prison, was enough for a 10 or 15-minute rant in which no one got hurt. So that's the status of the case. He's now in prison. I just communicated with his son-in-law a few days ago to invite them to come over to my property the next time I'm up in Rosewood, and I will discuss with them the long-term plans for the property so that Mr. Emanuel won't feel, as he said in the press, compelled to move once he's out of prison.
Well, let me ask you this. What transpired in last week's court on the local charges?
The court contacted me to ask if I would agree, or if I agreed to have the charges have him serve his time concurrently. So he got the same sentence in county court that he got in federal court, and the sentences will run concurrently, and the 6 plaintiffs agreed to that.
So for people who don't know what that means, that basically means he'll serve his year and a day both for his local crime and for the hate crime.
That's correct, Representative.
That is what that means, that he will serve a year and a day. Well, I have to say that you were very nice and polite and lenient with him, because just knowing that somebody has that much hate, I wonder, will that change him any, having to serve this year and a day? Or will he come out just as he went in, as hateful as ever? That's yet to be seen, but you truly blessed him. Because I don't know if me personally, if I could have done that, even though I do fight every single day for people not to be incarcerated. But
my mom spoke to me from the grave.
Okay. And when that happens, we know exactly that we have to do what we're told. So that's what's happening. He's in prison for a year and a day on both his state and his federal crime. Let's hope that would deter him from doing anything else as crazy as that to anybody else.
But before we leave this subject, let's pause for a moment and recognize that an all-white jury in Alachua County convicted this man of 6 counts of hate crime.
Right.
And he's a very well-known person in Levy County, a very well-off person. And this jury made that conviction. And I think that speaks volume for the people of Florida, particularly in this historical moment when Florida is in such a racially torn state.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted you to come on and talk about this because typically February is known as Black History Month. Well, I believe that every single day we've got to share some history with our children and with our communities. And as an elected legislator, it just behooves me that we have cut off teachers' ability to teach true history. It's people like you who can carry that torch and continue to do that. That's why I wanted you right now, because we're celebrating right here in Tallahassee on the 20th our Black History programs. What kind of gentleman you are. I don't know, Dr. Dunn, if I'd be that nice and polite. Blessed your mom, because she said do it and had to do that.
My dad didn't say that.
But the gentleman that edits my show, he and I have been laughing about you from the time he actually edited the show. He keeps reminding me of how you were on that bus and you didn't sit your butt where it was supposed to be originally. So we talk about you all the time.
Well, good home training never leaves you. We're raised in our culture. We're taught certain things as bedrock values, and fairness and forgiveness. And reaching for peace is one of the things that I suspect you two were raised to respect.
Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about what's happening you're at New College?
Yes. I taught a course at New College. I had to do it secretly.
Let's talk about it.
I went over to Sarasota 4 times to meet my own class in secret. I took them on the Teach the Truth tour. And there was something wonderful about it because we were doing it in spite of the changes at New College. Professors and students in a small group, a little better than a dozen, who said, we're going to do this. So we went into institutional racism. We dealt with lynching in Florida. We dealt with hope for the future. So we dove into these things in ways that the governor does not wish us to do.
Right.
In ways that offend the current administration in Florida. But we did it. We felt good about it. And now I'm considering taking some of those students to Washington, to the National Museum of African American History and Culture for a deep dive into Black history in Washington, D.C. Our little nonprofit has been able to do these tours. We've done 6 of them. We now expect to do more of them. We will be taking 4 tours for the United Teachers of the Day to get them involved in learning this history as it should be taught. So we're doing very, very well in terms of the response to taking people out to walk the grounds where these things happen and to feel the spirit, to feel our ancestors, and to relate the importance of this history.
Rosewood was a thriving, predominantly Black town in rural Levy County, not far from Gainesville. And during the course of several days, starting on New Year's Day in 1993, the mob killed Rosewood citizens, burned homes and buildings to the ground.
Years after the massacre, survivors largely stayed silent. There's a lot of people, even those here in Florida, who do not know that this happened. Jenkins believes it's especially important that people know the truth.
This has been my life's journey, Rosewood.
A historical marker, a single home, a small road sign. This is all that remains of Rosewood, a once thriving town.
Working people, everybody worked. Everybody got along. They helped each other. And it was a beautiful town.
For Lizzie Jenkins, Rosewood is more than a forgotten town. It's the fabric of her family's history, starting with her Aunt Mayhulda Gussie Brown Carrier, the town school teacher, and Mayhulda's husband, Aaron Carrier. Their picture-perfect life changed in an instant.
Until January 1, 1923, when Fannie Taylor, who was a resident of Sumner, accused my uncle of assaulting her on January 1. However, her lover, or the man that attacked her or bruised her, was a white man.
Back.
Within hours, that accusation ignited an angry mob. It invaded and attacked Rosewood.
Burned it to the ground, and there were approximately 5 Blacks killed.
As the chaos ensued, a white merchant named John Wright sheltered survivors inside his home. It's the only house still standing today. Even years later, Jenkins remembers her aunt living in unspeakable fear. One story from her childhood still fresh in her memory.
She heard a truck. She jumped up from the sewing machine and ran to the room, which left me, a little girl, baffled. What happened? Watching her movement and her facial expression, I knew something was wrong. I heard my mother say, and I remember these words today, the coast is clear. I had no idea what that meant when my mother said it.
Lizzie Jenkins tells me one of her main goals is to relocate the John Wright house to Archer, Florida. That's where her mother and her aunt grew up. Until then, she continues her life's work, fulfilling a promise to share Rosewood's history and honor those who died a century ago.
It's our history, and we need to appreciate it and appreciate the people that contributed so much. Until then, things are not going to change.
Believe that those kinds of things happened in our country, just in general, right? Were there ever any reparations for the victims of Rosewood, Ashley?
There were, but it just took a very long time, roughly 70 years. Florida lawmakers passed legislation that did provide compensation for survivors. But again, the human cost of this tragedy, you guys, town of Rosewood itself never recovered. If we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
On January 1st, 1923, a white mob descended on the African-American town of Rosewood, Florida, and burned the whole place to the ground. In the early 1920s, the town of Rosewood, Florida was a small but thriving black community. But in 1923, a white mob destroyed the entire town, all because a white woman claimed that a black man assaulted her. But even though the official death toll remains at 8, some estimates claim that as many as 200 people died. The surviving residents were driven out of the town never to return. The story faded away almost immediately after the violence ceased. 4,743 lynchings were recorded in America from 1882 to 1968. Florida, of course, was not immune to these violent murders. Around the time of the Rosewood Massacre, the state had an exceptionally high number of lynchings, and many of the victims were black men. For a black man even to say something to a white woman, that was an excuse to be lynched, and they often used any excuse they could find to terrorize black people. Tragically, the time was ripe for an incident like the Rosewood Massacre, and all it took was a white woman's lie. What happened in Rosewood? Some black people who worked in Sumner said the real story was that Taylor had been beaten by her white lover and simply used the story of a black man hitting her to hide her affair from her husband. But her husband, James Taylor, was still determined to seek revenge on the man who allegedly assaulted her. So he pulled together a mob to find the assailant. Not only did he gather white people in Sumner, he also requested help from neighboring counties, and he called upon hundreds of Klan members. The Real Rosewood Foundation reported that Taylor's dispatch provoked 400 to 500 Klansmen to head to Sumner to assist him on his mission. They packed their gear and headed to Rosewood with a vengeance to participate in destroying the town at any cost. Law enforcement announced that a black prisoner named Jesse Hunter had just escaped from a chain gang. So they set their sights on finding him. When the mob descended on Rosewood, Hunter was nowhere to be found. But the mob members quickly became convinced that the black residents were hiding him, and so the massacre began. The stories of murder, rape, and other forms of violence were highly disturbing. Immediately after, the mob began firing the buildings in the village. After members of the mob killed James Carrier's brother and mother, they told him to start digging his own grave right nearby. When he couldn't dig because of the stroke that had left his arm paralyzed, the mob shot him and left his body to rot next to the fresh graves of his family. Meanwhile, the mob continued burning churches, homes, and other buildings in Rosewood, unleashing terror on anyone who ran out or was spotted hiding in the woods. Even after the mob began to disperse, many groups returned to the town at the end of the week to burn what little was left of it. The one exception was the home of John Wright, a white merchant who owned a store nearby. Fearing a return of the mob, the surviving black residents fled Rosewood, leaving behind the ruins of what had once been their home. In February 1923, a grand jury investigated the Rosewood Massacre. But after hearing the testimony of nearly 30 witnesses, mostly white, the grand jury claimed they didn't have enough evidence for prosecution. For decades, it seemed like the survivors would never get justice. That is, until 1982. Gary Moore, a journalist for the St. Petersburg Times, resurrected the story by conducting interviews with survivors who were ready to speak out. Moore went on to publish a series of articles about the massacre, which soon garnered attention all across America. How Rosewood survivors fought for reparations. Black survivors of Rosewood and their descendants joined together in 1993 to ask the Florida legislature to acknowledge that the atrocity occurred, to admit that the state failed to protect the black residents, and finally, to pay. "We want restitution for the mayhem, the murder and eradication of our families," said Arnett Doctor, whose mother, Philomena Goins, survived the massacre by hiding out in the woods and then jumping aboard a train that was sent to save the remaining black residents. The Florida legislature investigated the claims in a 1993 report. Amazingly, Florida then became one of the only states to create a reparations program for survivors of racial violence. As The Guardian reported, by April 1994, the House passed a bill to compensate victims of the attack with a 71-40 vote. 4 days later, on April 9, 1994, the Senate passed a matching bill with a vote of 26-14, to cries of "Praise the Lord" from those Rosewood descendants present. The law would eventually compensate the victims $150,000 each, providing over $2 million total for the survivors. It also created a scholarship fund. A few years later, the Rosewood Massacre was depicted on the silver screen in the 1997 movie Rosewood. Director John Singleton promoted the film as a dramatization and did not claim that it was historically accurate. While the town of Rosewood itself was never restored to its former glory, there is a Florida heritage landmark that stands in its place. A memorial of the horrific racial violence that happened there, this landmark represents an acknowledgement of the past and the hope for a better future.
And I'm so happy that Senator Thompson and you and the Black Caucus last session tried to get us support for the Rosewood Park. Got through the legislature. Thank you so much for that to all of you. And then the governor took it out.
He vetoed it, you all. You all hear me talk about veto and his little red pen.
But it got through the legislature thanks to the Black Caucus. And do try again, because we're going to have a park in Rosewood where people can come and be at peace and walk that ground and feel the spirit of what happened there. We're going to protect that ground. So whatever the legislature can do to help us with that, that's fine. But we will persist with or without the state support.
Absolutely. So tell people how they might be able to make donations so that'll help you along. I mean, every dime you can afford to provide, it's important. So Dr. Dunn, tell them how they might be able to make donations if they'd like to.
Thank you. Just go to Miami Center for Racial Justice.org. Miami Center for Racial Justice.org. And you'll read about our tours, about our current work, and you would be able to make a donation, which we would very, very much appreciate.
Absolutely.
We will be right back after this station identification.
You are watching The Opening Statement with your host, Dianne Hart, right here on Tampa Bay Television Network.
Now, on with the show.
Now, let me ask you this. I have a group of kids in Tampa, and I would love to figure out how we can connect them with you for them to learn something about history, their very own history, that they're absolutely not going to be taught in our schools.
What age group are we talking about?
We're talking about kids from 13 to 18.
Our Teach the Truth tours start with kids who are at that age and up. I would be very pleased to arrange a tour coming out of Tampa with your kids. I'm sure you probably want to get some other groups involved, and let's just do it. It's an overnight tour. We will go from Tampa to Gainesville, see a couple of places on the way, stay overnight in Gainesville. That's doable.
Definitely going to work on that. In fact, Children's Week here is the 24th of January, so all the kids will be here in Tallahassee. I will definitely, after I return home after March, I'll get in touch with you, and then we'll arrange it on whatever kind of break they may have. Or could we do it on a Friday and Saturday so they don't miss school?
We normally do them on Saturday and Sunday. Come back Sunday evening.
That works. Hey, I'll have to save some of my money from the election to be sure that we can have resources that you don't have to worry about paying for my children.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm training other folks to do these tours, representatives. I won't be doing a whole lot of tours,
okay,
but I'll do yours.
Thank you. Absolutely. And even if you can't do ours and somebody else is doing it, that's still okay. What's important to me is that our children understand where we come from, and they don't. They think that this is, everything's fine. Mm-hmm. We're all equal. What are y'all talking about? Mm-hmm. And just based on the governor's speech on yesterday, which my son, who's 33, called me and he was like, "Mom, you didn't stand up. Why didn't you stand up when the governor was giving his speech?" And I was like, "How do you know I didn't stand up?" He said, "You were on television." When you were watching it, there was no way I could stand up when he was saying DEI. So there was nothing for me to stand for. We need to teach our kids what's really happening here.
Exactly. And you know what, Rep? When I take kids to on this tour, for example, we go to Live Oak, where they lynched Willie James Howard, 15-year-old boy in 1944, for writing a letter to a white girl. To Willie James's grave, and we stand there and we pray and we sing. I ask the kids, are you all angry? Are you upset about what happened to Willie James? Almost to a person say no. This fear that kids can't handle it, that you got to protect them from emotional.
Not true.
What is that? Don't get me started. I don't know how to teach slavery objectively.
You have to tell the truth. That's objectively exactly what transpired. That's how we teach the truth to our children. We
And
cannot
they can handle
sugarcoat it. Yes, they can. They
Yes,
want
they
to
do.
know. They don't want to be protected from it.
And when you see what they see on TikTok and other places, you talk about protecting them from violence. Our kids are exposed to everything. But I try to make the point that we have to give credit to the white folks who did the right thing in those times. So I try not to teach our history as if be angry at white folks and they were all racist. Those white folks just kept their mouths shut, and so the lynchings continued. It's important to recognize in those instances where white people did the right thing. We're trying to acquire the 35 acres in Rosewood that holds the J.W. Wright house. As you may know, Mr. Wright and his wife saved a lot of people by hiding kids in the house at night, and they helped them get on the train and get out of Rosewood. And the young white couple that now owns those 35 acres, and we're talking with them. They want $2 million for the property, which is very, very fair.
Yeah, it is.
We were able to acquire those 35 acres that contain that J.W. Wright house, the only structure left standing in Rosewood, and make that into a national park that would tell not just the Rosewood story, but the Black history of Florida story. So I dare not even ask the legislature for $2 million. They wouldn't even give it $35,000 or $40,000 we asked for last year. But our goal is to have a national park in Rosewood that tells Florida's Black history in the kind of detail that it needs to be told.
Well, I believe that that's doable. We need to connect with all of our Divine Nine. They do have money. And let's see how we might be able to put together a fundraiser that runs like a 24-hour period. Talk about it for a few weeks before it transpires, and then say on Friday, we need every single one of you organizations to donate. We don't care what it is. I mean, even if we went up on a GoFundMe type of a page where we can see how the money is coming in and see whatever the goal is.
This is our history. Exactly. The last house standing in Rosewood. Can we not save it?
Exactly. I'm on board with whatever it is that you might decide to do. There's plenty of Black folk that look like me, know how to fundraise. They fundraise all the time. So we need to connect. And I have a couple of people in my head as we're talking about this that I'm going to reach out to and see how we can get their help.
I would be available and interested in that. I had not even thought about doing something like that.
Oh, yeah. We got to help you get this property. It's worth us saving for ourselves. Not just only Black people will come to the museum and to the park and all that. Everybody will come.
They would.
I don't know if you heard yesterday that Ben Crump has taken on a case where 215 people were buried behind a jail in Mississippi.
I hadn't heard about that, no.
There was a young Black guy. He disappeared, and his mom put in a missing persons report, trying to find her child. Come to find out, he was hit by a policeman, and they literally buried him in this field. And that's what led them to finding 215 people in this field. And I thought it was bad with the boys' home. We need to be paying attention all over this country as they try to erode our rights, try to wipe away our history. And we have to consider that what happens here in Florida just kind of seems to be spreading.
Exactly. And I've said every state should be doing what we're doing. Organize tours, take your young people to these places. People know where those places are. So save those places. Take our kids, let them experience these things, and then teach them to have our society overcome them. I spent 7 years as a naval officer defending my country on warships. And I'm not trying to indoctrinate anybody against our country.
None of us are. We just want to tell the truth.
Exactly. We're opening the Teach the Truth Garden first Saturday in February.
I need to see if I can get there.
I got to show you this garden. We have put in incredible vegetables that we're raising to give away in the community, as well as the place for people to come and learn the truth. I'll send you some things on it so that you'll be.
Please do. I'm trying to look at my calendar while we're on the phone, because if I put it down, I might not make.
It's going to be a big day, Saturday the 3rd. But one of the reasons that we're doing this is to fight this whole thing on book banning. We're going to be giving thousands of books to kids. We will be teaching the truth. But that's not the biggest problem in Florida right now. It's the banning of ideas. You can ban books and get a few books banned here and there. But when you say we ban the idea of institutional racism, you can't talk about that in Florida. But I'm hopeful that on that great day, day when we make our decision as a nation that we decide to continue as a democracy. And that's really where we are.
Exactly, because either one of those gentlemen could destroy democracy as America. What kind of country would we be to have a dictatorship in the United States of America, one of the greatest and most powerful countries on the earth?
I'm an American. I'll say whatever I want as long as I'm civil about it to anybody I want to, about anybody I want. I'm an American citizen, and that is what makes us a great country.
And just to think that they want to strip that away from you, your ability to say whatever you want to say, not just your ability to read, but your ability to speak.
Exactly.
And that, I mean, it's like, really, would you all actually want us all to just follow whatever you tell us to do? So it's kind of crazy, Dr. Dunn, but I appreciate speaking with you. I'm looking forward to the garden. So tell us one more time where the garden is, when it's going to open up. And then I also want you to tell people again how they can begin to donate. We must create that park in Rosewood, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. The Teach the Truth Garden is in Miami's Overtown community. That's our inner city. It's on Northwest 3rd Avenue at 9th Street, across from Mount Zion Baptist Church. And it opens February 3rd at noon. And we will be giving away books. We will be music. We'll have a choir singing. And we will do a walking tour of Overtown, just around the block, because there's so many important buildings right close to where the garden is. And then we're going to sail right on through the year in our activities in that garden, not just to give away books, but we're growing collard greens, cabbage, carrots to give to old people. Yeah, we have
right,
two
feed our seniors.
Yes, take them to the senior citizens and give them these collard greens. I got people walking by that garden now saying, looking, I want me some of those greens when they come out. So we're going to give our vegetables away, and we're going to give away books, and we're going to have a great time doing it. Please come down if you can. I'll give you more information following our discussion here.
Okay, now also tell them again how to make that donation. You all, any dollar amount is good.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what it is, please you all, and give it to them one more time.
Just go to Miami Center for Racial Justice.org and please donate. It's good not to have to beg for money when you have a good cause. Right. I think people, once they know what we're trying to do, I think they would help us, particularly your idea of raising money to buy that property in Rosewood, those 35 acres.
Oh, we absolutely have to do that. There's no question about that we have to ensure that Dr. Dunn and his organization is able to acquire that home and the 35 acres. What better way to save a piece of our history? Here in Tampa, we're trying to save the Jackson House. You've probably heard about it. The house is almost completely deteriorated, even though we gave $500,000 from the legislature a year or so ago, and then they got another $500,000 and $1 million from some other people. We've been raising money for the Jackson House, but we had a problem with the landowner that right adjacent to that property who did not want to give us a 7-foot easement. Go figure. So they're still working on that, but I am definitely willing to help you in any way that I can. You can watch the opening statement every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on the Lit TV network on Tampa Bay TV. That's our channel. We want you all to know that we're giving you information that you can use, and that's important. We want to make sure that people understand that we're trying to provide them with good, solid information. Thank you so much for joining me.
Anytime. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And as always, I thank you for joining the opening statement.